I have been with my husband, who is 33 years old, for 3 years, and we have been married for 2 years. Our relationship is overall good. I have a child from a previous relationship. We met on Bumble. He's from South Africa. When I first met him, he was so calm, extremely charming, sensitive, always complimented me, took me on dates, and was loving. Now it feels like I'm married to a stranger. He's unaffectionate, unromantic, dislikes too much affection, constantly starts arguments, places blame, and isolates me from people. Well, in my family's eyes, it feels that way. 2 years into our marriage, and it's like I'm a guest living in his space. When I want to do something that could be a minor inconvenience to him, he gets passive-aggressively upset and expects me to stop. I feel like I have to walk on eggshells. For example, if I ask him to help me fold clothes or pick up my child from school, he gets an attitude because he feels like I'm interrupting his game. He, on the other hand, just lives as if I don't exist most of the time. Little things have been piling up, and it's making me feel uneasy and unwelcome. To add, he is the breadwinner, and he is always there for me and my child if we need something financially. He will provide. Little things could be summarized as follows. He said when he gets his green card, he would like to visit his hometown alone first before my child and I come, because he wants to spend time with his family since it's been years since he's seen them. He said if we go together, then the entire trip will be about us as a family and not about him catching up. This means a lot to him, so I can see his point, but I guess I just feel left out. I've never been there, and I am helping him get his green card, so why can't my child and I go with him when he visits for the first time? I can't have family over because he thinks they are toxic and negative to be around since they didn't approve of him. They were upset because we got married after a month of being engaged. So now I'm not allowed to bring my family to our house. He changed the password to his phone a year after we started dating. He said we are entitled to his own privacy, married or not. I can't have a pet. When we first met, he said in order for us to get serious, I had to get rid of my child's dog because he hates pets. He said he wants to go the army route, specifically the National Guard, once his green card arrives because he believes he would become a citizen faster since the National Guard would sponsor everything after 2 years versus becoming a citizen through marriage, which he told me would take 10 years. He said he's not going on any family vacations with my family. My dad wants us to go on a family vacation for 4 days with him and my siblings next year. Backstory: a year ago, he was cool with my dad. However, now he said he doesn't have a desire to hang out or converse with him because he claims my dad is negative, always in competition with him, and materialistic. He randomly tells me that he feels like he would save so much more money if he were single. I had to tell him to stop saying this because it was making me feel sad, and he said that partners should feel comfortable talking about anything that's on their mind. He treats my son well financially. He pays for doctor visits, food, takes him to Chuck E. Cheese, and takes him to get haircuts. However, whenever he watches my child, he complains that my child showed him hell and would not stop talking. He said my son is so hyper that he gets easily burned out and overstimulated after having him for hours. He needs to regroup and play video games for hours to regain his energy. I can't get pregnant. He said he will leave me if I ever get pregnant and that he never wanted kids. Yet before we got married, he told me he was on the fence about having kids and never said no. We were watching My 600-Pound Life, and he made a joke saying he would leave me if I got up to 300 pounds. I am currently 120 pounds. He said he would leave me if I ever bring my parents to our house after he explicitly said no. He doesn't like my parents anymore and claims this would be a sign of disrespect if I go against his word. I'm not allowed to be friends with my last 2 friends. He said they are toxic and negative with nothing going on in their lives. He made so many passive-aggressive comments that I eventually stopped talking to them. He told me that if we ever don't work out, it would be easier on him because my son isn't biologically his. Therefore, it would be easier for him to catch a flight and live his life rather than for me. I would have to worry about the struggle of being a single mom again. He said he would leave me if he ever caught me cheating or secretly texting someone. I am not a cheater, but this came up when we were watching a movie. I can't buy an abundance of junk food. He said he's worried about me losing all progress from my weight loss journey, and he wants me to monitor my blood pressure. I can't talk on the phone with family for too long, more than 45 minutes to an hour. Lauer, because he feels like I'm wasting time talking to negative people. He will start being passive-aggressive and say things like, "You waste your time talking to people like that when they have nothing going for themselves, and they have already shown you time and time again that they don't care about you and they won't babysit your child." I can't walk around the neighborhood at night because he disapproves and gets mad if I'm out too late. He won't go with me to family events because he's holding grudges against my family, so he makes me visit my family alone. He talks about my teeth or my appearance through jokes and then tells me I'm being too sensitive when I ask him to stop. He makes negative comments about people who are pet owners. I can't drink alcohol or wine without him being passive-aggressive because he thinks I will drink too much. When I had a job, he would ask me how much money I had left to pay on my credit card because he wanted to make sure I was adhering to my credit card payment schedule. He would do this every 3 weeks to confirm I was actually paying my credit cards. He told me that when I become a respiratory therapist, I need to work 5 12-hour shifts rather than 3 12-hour shifts because he said he wants to ensure I pay all my student loan debt before we buy a house. He prefers to play video games for the majority of the day, from the time he gets off work at 7 p.m. until 12, 1, or even 3 a.m., rather than participate in family activities with me and my child. He says he can play the game for hours and be fine versus spending time with us because he feels overstimulated. If he does spend time with us, he will complain, or you can tell he's just doing it to please me. He plays video games even after we finish having intimacy. I have told him many times that he should come to bed so we can cuddle and talk afterward. He agreed and did this a few times before reverting to the same behavior. My family thinks he's controlling and that he scammed me to possibly become legal, but I know that's not true. What is happening? Please give me some perspective. Am I being unreasonable? How do I tell him that this makes me unhappy and makes me feel unwelcome? I'm starting to feel unwelcome and uneasy due to the constant demands and comments from him. Is this controlling? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You need to contact your local domestic violence resource at once. They will help you create a secret exit plan. They will help you find housing, get you going on social services like Medicaid, food stamps, and low-cost housing. They will help you seek employment. There is something you need to read about hurtful men called Why Does He Do That? Just Google it. Please get in touch with domestic violence support. You are being emotionally, financially, and mentally abused. Comment 2. Our relationship is overall good. Proceeds to detail an absolute nightmare relationship with point after point after point. Never change. Ours relationships. Never change. Now for the update. 2 days after the last post, I decided I needed a break from the drama at home. I was just constantly walking on eggshells around this guy. I was so done. My parents were celebrating their anniversary and had planned a dinner, so I took my kid and got out of there. My husband said he would come, but spent the entire day just playing video games instead of helping me get ready. I got my kid ready, myself ready, and we hopped in the car and headed straight to my parents' house. I felt so relieved to be around my family. No more worrying about how to act. What a relief. When we got there, my parents had a great dinner spread out, and everyone was in such a good mood. My brother Jake and his wife Rachel told us they were pregnant, and we all just celebrated and smiled. It was honestly just wonderful to see everyone so happy and excited. I noticed my husband was completely silent at the table, only talking when someone asked him a question directly, which was super awkward. Then, my dad jokingly asked if me and my husband had any plans for more kids. My husband scoffed and said we weren't ready for that. I felt so embarrassed. My dad was just joking around, and now my husband made things weird. The conversation went back to Jake and Rachel, and my husband just went back to being quiet. What a surprise. After dinner, I helped my mom clean up while my husband went back to the living room to play video games. My sister Kate mentioned how nice it was to have the family together, hinting that we should make it a regular thing. My husband overheard and said that family time was overrated, like super rude. Everyone was surprised and just looked at each other awkwardly. I brushed it off, not wanting to create any tension at dinner. This was supposed to be a happy night. After dessert, my dad suggested we play a board game together, and everyone agreed, except for my husband. He just stayed in the living room, isolating himself even more. I went back to the living room to check on him, and he was still glued to the screen. I asked him if he wanted to join the family for the game, and he snapped at me. He was just so rude. We had a brief argument then and there, and everyone in the family just looked awkwardly at each other. Like, why are you staring? Mind your own business, people. I just decided to ignore the argument and went to join my family for the game. After the game, my husband demanded that we leave, claiming he was just so tired. On the way home, he criticized me for spending too much time with my family and not enough time with him. He accused me of prioritizing them over our marriage, and he raised his voice in the car. Like, chill out. At home, the atmosphere was just so tense, we barely spoke as we got ready for bed. What a relief it was to wake up the next day. But then I found out he had been texting someone late at night, which just made me feel even worse. I confronted him about it, and he insisted it was just a friend from an online game. I decided to check our shared bank account and noticed a large withdrawal that I didn't recognize. When I asked him about it, he brushed it off, saying it was a surprise he was planning for me. Yeah, right. Over the next few days, he just continued to act distant and secretive. He avoided any talks about money. I started noticing new stuff around the house that we never agreed to buy, including a new gaming console. One night, I overheard him talking on the phone in a low voice, mentioning plans but cutting off when I entered the room. I decided to confront him again, demanding to know what he was hiding. He just accused me of snooping. He told me I wouldn't understand his plans anyway. The argument escalated, and he just stormed out. The following week, my mom called me, asking if everything was okay because my husband had been acting strange. Just before I could say anything, my husband announced that he was leaving for a weekend trip with friends. What a joke. Thank you for reading. Edit. I didn't get the chance to explain everything before my husband left. He took a bag and left in the middle of my rant. I called my parents to help me figure things out. They offered for me and my child to stay with them for a while, which I accepted. My husband is now ignoring all my calls and texts. Aita for walking out on my wife after she called me pathetic for caring about her. Aita for leaving my wife alone at a family barbecue after she mocked me with her sister. My wife and I have been married for 5 years now. Yes, we did get married pretty young, but these past 5 years have been the most amazing of my life. As far as I was aware, we were both incredibly happy. When we were first dating, this was brought up once though, in a much different way, and I thought it was simply resolved. I've always been a bit less masculine, I suppose. I thought it was pretty normal, but when we were first dating, her sister made some comments to that effect. Back then, I loved doing all sorts of cute little things for my wife. I would come over to her house and bring my guitar and spend time singing her favorite songs for her. I would go out of my way to make things for her, like paintings, small heartfelt crafts, and even a blanket I made that was based on one of our very first conversations. Her sister, who was married, still is, told her that she felt like the effort I was putting in wasn't masculine, and it was a turnoff. Of course, I laughed it off, and my wife did the same. She reassured me that she absolutely did not feel that way, and actually loved those qualities about me. I remember the exact conversation where she told me that her sister was just bitter because her husband would never go out of his way to make her feel special. I really didn't think it was a problem at the time because we moved past it perfectly. She reassured me and not once ever complained about my behavior or anything. The other night, my wife wasn't feeling well and I had plans to go out. Seeing her in that state, I felt terrible and decided to cancel my plans so that I could be there for her. When I told her I canceled, all of a sudden she blew up at me. She has never talked to me this way, but it felt incredibly harsh. She practically told me that I was pathetic because I always acted that way, and said something to the effect that she was tired of being with a fake man. She went on to tell me that it was weird how much I cared, that she wished I would just be like a normal guy and go out drinking with my friends. She said it was weird that I'm not into sports and that I want to spend so much time with her. Of course, I was incredibly hurt and ended up sleeping in our second bedroom that night. I spent the night thinking about it more and her last comments about me always wanting to be around. I thought maybe that was the real issue, so I went to talk to her about it this morning. I asked her if she felt like the real issue was that I smothered her, or if she just felt like she needed more of her own space. She just rolled her eyes at me and said no. I asked for more clarification because neither of us has ever been one to subscribe to gender norms like that. I told her, of course, I was a man, and I didn't understand what I was doing wrong or what exactly she was trying to say about my personality that hasn't changed at all in the 5 years we have been married. I told her about her sister and how back then she even reassured me that she didn't feel that way at all. All she said was something about how, of course, I wouldn't understand since I never grew into a real man. I'm just so lost and hurt. I've always been who I am. Why is this all of a sudden a problem? How do I even communicate to her how hurtful her words were? I don't really care about being manly, but hearing your partner tell you that they don't think you're living up to any standard really hurts. Am I just missing something here? Should I be acting more manly or something? We haven't talked since this morning, and I don't even know how I want to approach this. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I might also mention that you are so young. When I was young, I thought XYZ was the real thing, but then I grew up and matured and realized what is really important. You sound like a good guy, in fact, an outstanding partner. A lot of my friends would give an arm and a leg to have a guy cancel their plans to stay over and care for them. Honestly, that is rare. If being careless and selfish is what your wife thinks is a real man, then she will find a lot of real men out there. Leave her so she can see how great those real men are. If I were you, I would stand my ground and consider divorce. You will be wasting your life with someone that doesn't appreciate who you are as a person. People grow apart and change, and it seems like your wife has done so. Comment 2. This does not bode well, mostly because she appears incapable of discussing the issue. Given her outburst, she has been harboring resentment for a while, and when she wasn't ready to talk in the morning, or at least able to be respectful, that tells me that this resentment runs deep with her. To be honest, sometimes women end up going a little feral where they want stereotypical masculine energy from their guy. That can play out in different ways, but it's there. If this is not in your vision for yourself, even to please your wife, then it's time to bail before she seeks it elsewhere. Now, for the update. It's been a week since the fight with my wife. Man, what a week. I moved back into our bedroom, but there's still some space between us. You know? My wife has been really distant. I feel like I'm talking to a wall half the time. She's barely speaking to me, like, what happened to us? The other day, I overheard her on a call with her sister talking about our problems. Yeah, you heard that right. She was just chatting about our issues, like I wasn't even there. They laughed about how I was too soft and needed to toughen up. My wife was saying that. I can't even explain how much that hurt. I decided to keep my head down and avoid conflict. Not that it was hard, since she was basically giving me the silent treatment. My parents invited us to their annual 4th of July barbecue. I was nervous about seeing my wife's family, especially her sister. I mean, I wasn't looking forward to it, not at all. My wife agreed to go, but seemed uninterested in spending time with me. She was all, "Yeah, I'll go," but didn't even look at me when she said it. At the barbecue, my wife was chatting with everyone, including her sister. She was acting like nothing was ever wrong. Meanwhile, I'm over here feeling invisible. I was left alone, flipping burgers at the grill, feeling out of place. I mean, what was I supposed to do? My wife's sister made a few snarky comments about me in front of family. I brushed off her comments, trying to keep things light. She was all like, "Oh, is that all you know how to do? Flip burgers?" Yeah, I know how to flip burgers, Karen. My dad raised a toast to family, and everyone clinked glasses. My wife seemed to enjoy the attention, laughing with her sister. I was like, wow, this is my life now. I approached her, trying to start a conversation. I was like, hey, can we talk? She quickly turned the conversation back to her sister, though. It was like I wasn't even there. I noticed my wife's sister whispering to her, both stealing glances at me. I felt like I was in high school again, getting picked on. My brother-in-law asked me if I was okay since I seemed off. I shrugged it off, not wanting to draw attention. I was like, yeah, I'm good, just tired. Later, I found my wife sitting on the porch with her sister, deep in conversation. I overheard them talking about how I should act more manly around her. This was just getting ridiculous. I tried to give them space, but it felt like I was being talked about. My wife's sister challenged me to join a game of cornhole. I reluctantly accepted, trying to show I could be fun too. I was all like, yeah, I can do that. During the game, I missed a shot and her sister mocked me in front of everyone. She was all like, wow, you really are bad at this. My wife laughed and I wanted to leave but stayed for my parents' sake. I was like, just get through it. As the night went on, I pulled my wife aside to talk. She seemed annoyed, saying now wasn't the time. I was like, when is it going to be the time? I insisted we needed to talk about what was happening. She snapped back, saying I was ruining the fun for everyone. I took a deep breath, deciding to step away again. I overheard her sister suggesting I should just be quiet for once. My wife didn't stick up for me. She just laughed along. That hurt more than anything. After the barbecue, I went home separately, needing space. I decided to write my wife a letter expressing my feelings. I left the letter on her pillow, hoping she would read it. The next morning, she read the letter and seemed upset. She asked to talk, and we ended up at a coffee shop. We discussed everything openly for the first time. She apologized for how she acted at the barbecue. By the end of the conversation, we made plans for a date night. I'm honestly feeling a mix of relief and anxiety right now. Like, I'm glad we talked and made plans for a date night, but I'm still super worried about all the stuff that happened before. It feels like we're kind of back at square one, you know? I just hope this date night helps us get back on track. I'm ready to fight for my marriage, but I really need her to be all in too. I'm still gonna read all your comments and advice, so please keep them coming. Edit. It's been tough, but my wife and I had a great date night. We talked about our issues and both agreed to focus on our marriage. We're planning regular date nights to keep the communication going. She's been more affectionate lately, which feels like a step in the right direction. Aita for refusing to confront my dying father about his failures. Aita for refusing to forgive my dying father for his lifetime of failures. My dad, who is 73 years old, and I have never had a solid relationship. I don't respect him at all, and the decisions he's made throughout his life have made me resent him. Examples of this behavior include, but are not limited to, being a philandering womanizer and cheating on my mom with every woman around, which led to a divorce when I was 7 years old. Continuing this behavior with future partners and boasting to me about his endeavors. Engaging in risky illegal activity, which resulted in one instance of police intervention. Constantly saying how much he loves my brother and me, yet being unavailable for much of our childhood. When he was available, there was no real effort. One of the biggest issues I have is that he suffers from grand delusions about himself. Everything he does, he is, according to him, the best ever. There is nothing he does that he does not consider himself a complete natural expert in. For the last 40 years, I've had to listen to him expounding on his abilities, all the while considering him completely mediocre in every sense of the word. This is one of the hardest things to deal with. For most of my adult life, I have distanced myself from him and used every excuse to avoid being in his company. My wife is repelled by him and does not want to be around him either. We had our second child 3 months ago, and he has only been over once since then, and that was difficult. When he visits us, he'll say a cursory hello to everyone, basically ignore my children, then sit at our table and talk about himself for an hour before we tell him we have things we need to attend to. He is a cup emptier, not a cup filler. Now, my issue is this. He is currently very sick with pneumonia and has ongoing chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. He has been in and out of the hospital multiple times in the last month, and it looks unlikely that his condition will improve. In fact, it seems possible he may die sometime soon, though I guess it's possible this current bad patch may pass. The more I think about this, the more I realize that I've never told him exactly how I feel. I find myself in my head a lot lately, thinking about the conversation we would have. Me telling him how I think he's failed us, him not quite fathoming it, and so on. The more I think about it, I also realize that perhaps my time is limited if I am to have a conversation with him. That said, due to this version of himself he believes, I think it would destroy him to hear my honesty. And if we were to have the conversation, to what end? I'm unsure it would make a difference. My mom was saying only this morning, he's always been the same, and he'll never change. So I guess my question is it more important that I get this stuff off my chest, or do I keep it to myself to avoid inflicting emotional suffering on someone who is already dealing with a lot right now? To add, I am also well aware that I am privileged. I wasn't abused in any way, and my dad did actually love me, even if he is completely egocentric at heart. I'm aware that so many people have a more difficult relationship with their parents, or are not able to have any relationship at all with their parents. But despite this, my internal struggles with this issue still seem difficult and are taking up more headspace than I would like to allocate right now. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I try to live by, if I have to ask, then I probably shouldn't. You sound more like you need therapy to deal with some issues you had as a child. If you think it would destroy him, then you obviously think he cares about you. Also, how much better are you if you do try to break him down with the intention of doing so? You're right, if that's all you have, then you had a great life. Divorce happens, and people are full of themselves. I would work on real issues. Comment 2. I wouldn't do it to spare him anything, but I also wouldn't bother because frankly, it might hurt you more than it really hurts him. Everyone imagines confronting a toxic parent will be cathartic, but really, the toxic parent is just unlikely to take anything you say seriously and will likely just reply in a way that hurts you again. Because if he were someone open to criticism and feedback, he wouldn't be the person you know him to be. Now, for the update. 3 days after the last post, I went to the hospital to visit my dad. He looked weaker than before, lying in a hospital bed with oxygen support. I brought him a fruit basket since he couldn't eat much. He smiled, but there was an awkward silence that filled the room. I sat in the chair next to him, trying to think of something to say. My dad started talking about his younger days, mentioning old friends and good times. I listened, nodding, but my mind was elsewhere, stuck on our past. He suddenly asked if I had any regrets about my life choices. I hesitated, then decided to keep my mouth shut. The following day, my brother Jake called me, saying he wanted to talk. We met at a diner where he ordered coffee and a slice of pie. Jake revealed that he talked to our dad about his health and how he's been feeling. He mentioned that Dad wanted to make things right before it was too late. We argued about whether we should talk to Dad together. Jake thought it would help Dad, while I believed it would just upset him more. Our conversation got heated, and I ended up walking out of the diner. I returned to the hospital the next day. I found Dad watching a baseball game on TV, trying to take his mind off things. I sat down and asked him how he was really feeling about his health. He brushed it off, saying he was just tired and wanted to enjoy the game. I brought up our childhood, mentioning some specific moments that hurt. Dad's mood changed. He became defensive and started blaming circumstances. We both fell silent, the air heavy with unspoken words. A few days later, Jake called again, saying Dad's condition got worse. He suggested we visit together to talk things through. During the visit, I noticed Dad was struggling just to breathe. He looked at us, and for the first time, he seemed vulnerable. Jake spoke up first, sharing how he felt about their relationship. I followed suit, bringing up the years of hurt and distance. The nurse came in, interrupting our moment to check on Dad. Once she left, Dad tried to change the subject to lighter topics. A few days later, I got a call from Jake saying Dad was being moved to hospice. I rushed back to the hospital, knowing things were getting serious. I arrived just in time to see Dad being wheeled into a private room. The hospital staff gave us a moment, and I sat beside him. I took his hand. We sat there in silence, just holding hands, and honestly, it felt like both everything and nothing at all was being said. It was a complicated moment, like emotions were swirling around us, but we just didn't have the right words to express them. I wanted to talk about everything that had happened in the past, but I also didn't want to add more weight to what he was already carrying. Life's just not that simple, you know? So I guess for now, I'll keep being there for him and just see what happens. If anything major goes down, I'll definitely update you guys. To answer a few questions, my dad's health declined rapidly after being moved to hospice care. The doctors estimated he might have only a few weeks left. My brother and I are trying to support him as best as we can during this time, though our relationship is still complicated. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.